Chapter 3. Combined Intelligence, Combined Consciousness. Emotional and Operational Intelligence Consciousness. If our opposite pole is the opposite, the stranger, but our opposite pole is also our provocateur, and thus our activator for movement, changes, development, transformation, our energy input, why then do we not have more respect for ourselves, each other, or all the other foreign things we meet? We are each other's pattern breakers and constantly receive all kinds of wholenesses and systems. Why do we reject changes so much when our human nature was built on the basis of a change process? That is to reject ourselves, our basic substance, who we are. We are the concept of change, and we constantly meet the foreign things, our opposite poles. Our age, physics, mental abilities, consciousness, all abilities of our intelligence and our circumstances are always changing. Why do we deny our keystone of what our existence was built upon, with resistance against changes? What do all illnesses of today prove? They prove system errors in the physical system of our body, our mental or psychological system. Just like in the digital or operational system, where something in these systems counteracts the system operation in flow, or is outdated and needs a change or an update, or a virus that must be cleaned away. Errors show us the way to a quality-based life. Every illness is a sign of an organic system error, or put another way, this is the way of the system to tell us to be attentive, and that in the area where the error is, there is a need for an investigation, a system that needs an updating or cleanup, or a virus that needs to be removed. Virus is often likely to symbolize a thought form which is outdated, just like a unit in a system. We are not talking about the inborn, hereditary, biological illness. Inside us, being humans, it may be a thought form which causes some of the so-called social illnesses, welfare illnesses, or illnesses caused by lacking welfare, like anxiety, stress caused by an outdated thought form based on control, which goes against the thought form meta-duality, and thus its natural constant change with the opposite poles in the focal point. Illnesses. Illnesses caused by eating habits, social, cultural, or religious forms. Can cultural thought forms possibly cause us illnesses? Well, yes, I actually think so. Based on my learnings and experiences with people having outdated thought forms, or simply unnecessary thought forms that are no longer compatible with the dominant and updated new collective thought forms, then resistance and rejection will be created, moving in both directions and with both opposite poles locked in this condition. What I call system errors occurs like this. So now there is an opportunity to make an update, and through a development or a phase out, to abolish the outdated thought forms which are no longer appropriate. Cultural or religious thought forms creating resistance in a person or a unit may, for example, cause stress and depression. These may also be caused by sexual non-recognition, taboos, or simply abuse, due to thought forms being outdated to the large collective consciousness, but which others still stick to. This is clearly one of the biggest challenges of today, and the coming time in relation to the integration of the cultural and religious differences in the new collective consciousness, which the foreign units move to. Here, we do not just talk about nationalities, but also family and completely basic cultural dynamics in everyday relationships, in the system where we interact. This may be a job, family, or a country to which you move. Here, you will be rejected. People reject the new and more developed thought forms. There are many units in the outdated collective consciousness which want a change and the new thought form. If they do not have a possibility of disconnecting from the old collective consciousness, then they will be in a condition of stress, depression, and develop many other kinds of physical or mental illnesses. Every thought form, outdated for the collective consciousness, but which we stick to as a unit in the wholeness, will be rejected by the system or the wholeness, which has been optimized by the collective thought forms. The illnesses developed are a sign of a system error between a thought form, the energy we receive and work from, and the original and natural functional needs of our body. Dissatisfaction and a non-optimized lifestyle become an everyday occurrence, under and in which many people live. A lifestyle which they are actually not conscious about or know the input and output of, and which causes much damage to their physical, psychological, and mental body. I know very well that I am surfing at the surface of something we are not supposed to talk about, a subject which is so sensitive and has been a taboo for so many years that not many people dare go into it. Namely, sexuality and gender identity. Actually, it need not be caused directly by a religious thought form, but lies in the cultural DNA, which may still carry a thought form which in the old days originated from religion. Sexuality in its duality. The feminine and masculine intelligence consciousness, female and male management. Now I'm a free-thinking woman with a double cultural background from two countries which could not be further apart, each other's opposite poles. I was one of the privileged women who had a family, who gave me the freedom to be the one I wanted to be. Even though the person I am today, or was then as a 20-year-old girl, was not recognizable to them, and the cultural background they derive from, they still gave me my freedom. I had my children before marriage, and have a very healthy and developed sexuality, physically and in terms of identity. I believe that sexuality is a large part of our basic existence. We eat, sleep, breathe, have children, think, feel, have sex, etc. Some of the things we do are conscious, others are not conscious. Sexuality is just as big a part of the elements for our survival and well-being, and thus a healthy lifestyle. Without sex, our race would not survive. And yes, I could write several books about what sex contributes to our psyche and physical body. The brain twister here. The masculine and feminine construction management is the quality balanced business. The divergent gender empowerment creates alignment integration between the inner power of different genders. The magnificent business solution with equality of our divergent abilities and competences in a balanced interaction. I love being feminine just as much as I love being masculine. My nice high-heeled shoes and naughty dresses from my dressing room. It's not that I wish to seduce anyone, but because I love to see myself in them, to be proud of my gender identity and the role I play in the course of nature. I love my hiking boots just as much, and when I have full blast with my inner wild power getting projects started, or making decisions which I do not know where they end business-wise, I love being able to contribute with all of me and with all of my abilities. I believe that we are moving towards universality, a future where diversities meet in their agreement, and we become whole humans with different abilities, and not a man with feminine sides or a woman with a masculine side, namely a universal human being, with all of our abilities activated in a structural unit, which I call combined intelligence and combined consciousness. This is where we no longer define ourselves as a woman being masculine, but a woman who is good at, and not a man who is very feminine, but a man who is good at. Our femininity and masculinity are our different abilities which we all have. It's simply a profiling of two kinds of abilities we all have, but our inborn physical gender is based on one of them, woman as feminine and man as masculine. We live in the dualities, and therefore in the identity of our basic existence and our work description. We are divided into two poles physically and two energetic poles as abilities. However, we are depending on each other and cannot do without the other one, like plus and minus. In that, every duality has a duality in its opposite pole. Then every gender contains both of the abilities which the gender of the opposite pole has. Otherwise, they cannot be coherent and meet in the loop of time in the middle. You can read more about this in Theory Book 2. The emotional intelligence for the feminine and masculine intelligent consciousness, female and male consciousness. One thing I bring with me from the subject sexuality and gender identity is this. When cultural and religious thought forms suppress our sexual need and our gender identity in the form of taboos or old stories and convictions, who has proved or made that the storytelling about the sexuality of the man or woman that has been common knowledge until today, the one which many cultures and countries still believe in today, navigate from, and have convinced many women and men about? Well, fantasy is one thing, and our sexual thought forms and convictions may also need an update, an optimization, and development from the primitive form it can be presented in. Our sexuality is either presented in the form of an experience and thought form, represented by the porn industry, or it is a thought form which cultural norms and religions represent as an opposite pole. We are moving away from something as mechanical as the porn world until something which is almost put to shame and to not being important in the world of religion, at least not for women in many cultures. Personally, I have nothing against porn, but I find it very inappropriate that we introduce only one form of sexuality, which is so mechanical and operational, and which is based only on our organic, instinctive sexuality, namely an IQ-based sexuality. It can be very far from reality when too many people have lost contact with their sexual inner power based on the emotional intelligence as an emotional sexuality, or our dynamic intuitive sexuality. Again, this means that even our sexuality is built on dualities. Operational sexuality may be just as necessary, but the imbalance occurs only the moment we navigate only with half of who we are, what we are capable of doing, and thus our needs. Sexuality in real life is not only what we see from the porn world. Emotional sexuality is not just about being in love with someone or being based on your emotions for others, but being based on your emotional energy coupled to your sexuality, your EQ-based sexuality. The brain twister. Through the meta-duality consciousness theory, you manage to master a private or professional life, combined and separately, with a sustained and combined consciousness in growth and balance, to achieve happiness in all aspects of life. I might as well say that I distance myself from all thought forms that culture and religion stand for and which set limits. Those that make sexuality a taboo, a shame, or a thought form which segregates the rights of sexuality for men and women. I go right into the heart of the matter, and I can tell you that not many of the beliefs we have been introduced to are true. A woman is able to have an orgasm without touching, simply by activating her emotional energy, fantasy, and consciousness. A female orgasm doesn't just depend on a touch. I would like to neutralize the existing taboos and beliefs, and maybe, being a woman or a man, you start thinking of your thought forms about sexuality for yourself or your opposite gender. I can do so because I am a woman myself, double cultural, with a clarified gender identity and sexuality, and would like to create consciousness about the subject for you as a man or a woman. We all have a responsibility for this. Women and men have a responsibility for rediscovering their sexuality that they were originally designed for by nature, before all the relation-based and man-made thought forms built on power and anxiety started their game. A man is capable of much more than just 3 jerks and a pass. Sorry for my direct language, but sometimes we have to call a spade, and a shovel, a shovel. Not being a man, I will stick to my truth and statements as a woman in this book. Being a man or a woman, a person, we are able to create a sexual energy in the duality, in the interaction between 2 persons, which raises an energetic intensity between 2 persons, which cannot be explained. It goes beyond the sexual experience of an orgasm and is a consciousness condition, where everything around us ceases. A condition of vulnerability, where we can feel our whole self in the interaction with our opposite pole. A condition where we can develop ourselves to seeing, hearing, thinking, sensing, feeling, and acting sexually on a completely different level. How many of you know this condition? What is it we pass on to our children? When are we going to press the start button before stress, anxiety, depression, or other illnesses do so for us? We know, and science has proved this many times, how big a role sex plays to our health and well-being. I shall not go into this here, as you can find many books where you can read about this subject. Our lifestyle, our sexuality, our well-being, our belief, our families, the outside world, our job, our neighbors, everything is based just as much on our emotional intelligence as on the operational intelligence and the needs they create for us, and which we must fulfill all the time. We really need new tools and knowledge to be able to navigate so that we can gain new experiences with both our operational intelligence and emotional intelligence combined as a whole. Our emotional intellect and our logically thinking intellect combined into the original signature we were created with, and which helps us evolve towards becoming happy human beings. I am repeating again and again, your emotional intelligence, dynamic intuition EQ, and your operational intelligence, the IQ of your organic instincts, constantly talk to you in the form of our emotions and through the reaction of our physical body, the strategic way we see, hear, think, sense, feel, and act. It's the same cycle of cause and effect, which has a consequence which leads to circumstances, and in the circumstances we find experiences which lead to changes, renewed energy, and wisdom, which again becomes a cause of its own. Wholeness ability, the combined knowledge, is the result of combined intelligence and combined consciousness. In the language of the brain, our organs, our feelings, and the nature around us are the cause to the beginnings of any action in our life, personally as well as in business. Cause and effect. Units and systems. Units and systems with innovation ability, integration ability, capacity ability, wholeness ability, coincidence ability, divergent ability. As mentioned in the previous chapter, then an old cultural thought form, which has already been phased out by the existing system, or wholeness, in its development phase, rejects the outdated cultural thought form, which an outsider or a unit brings along. Here we meet the integration and integration ability. Or seen from another angle, if the individual units or persons in an optimized system have not integrated the optimization, which the collective consciousness system has personally made in their individual inner thought form, then there will be a rejection from the unit and thus the wholeness, or vice versa. The collective consciousness, consisting of the needs from the majority, has developed a thought form they search for or need. In this process, something old, being not useful for its existence anymore, must be phased out to make room for the initiated development. The individual units or consciousnesses, having not made the same conscious optimization, reject it and do not want the collective change, which the system they interact in has chosen to make, and they are then likely to meet a rejection. Their action creates an imbalance for flow in the optimized system. Two minuses reject each other, dualities cease, and thus the imbalance arises. The dualities get out of balance, and their energetic way of working. Unconsciously and consciously, a condemnation and by this a rejection are going to occur, stopping our curiosity to find solutions. We go up against our nature if we do not make use of our integration ability in trying to optimize our unit system to be able to integrate in the wholeness or in the collective consciousness. This could also happen if a system or a wholeness rejects a new unit or consciousness, because the wholeness is not capable of understanding the innovative proposal of a new thought form made by the individual unit or consciousness, or because a wholeness does not evaluate its influence and effect to be appropriate for its survival strategy or optimal well-being. In the notes that accompany this audiobook, there is a diagram focusing on Law 1, which is the law of combined consciousness ability. And law 2, the law of sustained consciousness ability. And the diagram explains the interlinking between coincidence ability, capacity ability, integration ability, wholeness ability, innovation ability, and divergent ability. Here we are talking about a divergent unit or consciousness being better developed than the wholeness in which it is interacting, and which has some abilities well developed and likely to benefit the system. We must remember that all wholenesses are also a functioning unit for an even larger system or wholeness in which they are interacting, cause and effect in its principal circle. Divergent abilities, which may inspire the entire wholeness, the collective consciousness. The divergent consciousness unit has a high circular divergent ability. The divergent person has one or more abilities being more developed than those of other persons, and may contribute to development and phase out at other heights for balance, to ease the transformation and provide an innovative approach to life. We must remember that if we and our systems should work in balance, then the basic elements are the circular energetic movement and thought form, in order to make dualities meet other dualities, transforming the linear energy into a circular movement in step with our human and nature's course. It is just like our seasons. 2 seasons are opposite poles to other seasons, but they work circularly, as the axes of winter and summer meet the axes of autumn and spring. Dualities meeting dualities. For example, we must first learn to balance linearly in day and night, before we can balance circularly in weeks and months or through the years. Units that are linear create wholenesses with circular energy in the duality principle, being based on cause, effect, consequence, circumstances, experiences, changes, renewed energy, wisdom, and cause. We are social organisms and are depending on each other. Actually, we are part of each other, according to the meta-duality theory. In the notes accompanying this audiobook, there is a further diagram that explores this relationship between the different seasons, so moving from summer to autumn, winter, and spring, and correlating these with the different tenses, past tense, present tense, and future tense. It turns on sustained consciousness ability, the optimized quality of an understandability creates a balanced quality in a system. Imbalance, which creates conflicts and chaos, mentally, physically, and mechanically. Our navigation compass consists of dynamic intuition, EQ in one half and organic instincts, IQ, in the other half. They work together, constantly and all the time, in cooperation, consciously and unconsciously, and show us the way to create balance inside ourselves. When we meet an energy condition of phase out, a possibility of development or a condition of resistance, then they'll be received in many different ways by our compass. This depends on whether we use our whole compass and are able to consciously use it for ourselves to distinguish between dirt and cinnamon, to be able to navigate with our reaction patterns, the causes and effects of our emotional conditions. And therefore, our reactions create our circumstances. If, for instance, we receive a signal as a threat to our unconscious dynamic intuition, EQ, then it'll be received by our organic instinct, IQ. Organic instinct, IQ, handles this energy signal and sends out a plan of action to us. Whether we feel anxiety or peace as a reaction to this signal of danger depends very much on the situation and how much we have developed our combined intelligence. If our navigation compass is not quite optimized and updated for the age we are living in, and thereby the life conditions it sets for us as humans, then we are likely to meet an imbalance inside us, in our reaction patterns, and also our patterns of action. As life and nature are dynamic, and we are born in this dynamic, then everything around us is in constant development and dynamics. And by this, we are also a dynamic human being by nature. The energy of emotion is also dynamic and in a constant movement, and then also changing. If our compass has not developed this dynamic and cooperation between our EQ and IQ, then an imbalance is going to appear. As an effect of imbalance, a conflict is going to occur inside us, and then also in our behavior patterns. Therefore, EQ is so important in our compass, together with our IQ. They help each other to navigate, think or feel, and therefore we are able to separate between danger, anxiety, and beware signals. We are also capable of knowing if we should react to them because they are appropriate, or if we should deviate from or reject them because they are inappropriate. As soon as a rejection stops an energy in flow, then the energy is being collected in one stop and becomes a blockade if it is not replaced by a new form of energy very quickly. The blockade is going to influence the opposite unit or pole, or the wholeness in their interaction in the middle, if the integration ability is low or lacking. The blockage is going to be right there, where either the emotional intellect, such as feelings, or the logical intellect, such as thoughts, take over, and one of them then stops the flow, which is in an integration between two opposite poles, constantly and all the time. Therefore, we can get a myriad of thoughts or become too emotional in a situation. The place where the organic instincts, being half our compass, take over and react only on an emotion like anxiety, and quite forgets its duality, which might be trust, then the compass understands and handles a rejection by making us use the other usable emotional conditions for balance. Therefore, we get out of balance. Simply, when we feel only one of the emotional conditions through a warning from our organic instincts, in a situation like, if you invest then you are going to lose everything and that's dangerous, then you are never going to invest. This is because you feel only the fear of failure. However, if you also use other parts of the conditions of your emotional intelligence, such as success experiences and development, when you receive the warning signal from your organic instinct, then you'll be able to achieve better balance in the anxiety and to move on to peace for the experience of success, which an investment may also contribute with. However, because nobody knows the outcome of this investment, then your emotional intelligence must, after a balancing session, again cooperate with your organic instincts, the operational intelligence, IQ, to be able to make a real assessment and a strategic risk assessment of how much you can afford to lose without putting yourself in a survival condition where the probability of success is also big. Here, you are putting all your emotions into play. Integration ability. It's all about integration in the knowledge from which every situation is emerging in order to understand the consequences. Whether it is anxiety, anger, or stress, then it is our lacking ability to handle our emotions that creates a rejection, which might be a reaction to a change we did not want or choose ourselves. Here we go up against our own human nature. We were born in the sign of changes, where dualities constantly meet dualities, like life and death. We live to die one day, and we cannot reject that. If we reject this factor and do not understand our own natural basic element as a human being, then we are likely to create a blockade in the form of anxiety. An anxiety and a rejection being a result of our lacking understanding and resistance of a factor that cannot be changed. We are capable of doing many things, but we cannot go up against the law of nature. It would end in a rejection, a conflict, chaos, or illness, system error, depending on its context, if the unit, consciousness, does not find a compatible system which it can interact in or with, or if it does not update itself to be a more compatible thought form, which is united with our basic law of nature, or the collective consciousness. Or if the unit, consciousness, finds it difficult to surrender to the new thought form and change of the collective system, which the unit is part of and demands from to keep balance and create quality for all of its units. Here, the blockade is going to show itself in us, either in the form of physical or mental illnesses, or life challenges like bankruptcy. Here, we enter capacity and capacity ability. Capacity is going to be reduced, and one loses one's abilities due to the blockade. Just as balanced emotions are likely to contribute to bigger capacity, an imbalance and blockade will reduce our capacity and thus our effect as an output. We will project the blockade in the systems we are interacting in as we still, despite our resistance, search for our opposite pole, unconsciously, both intuitively and instinctively, as our rejection is against the course of nature and the change, which is inevitable for survival. Our consciousness is, at some point, automatically going to search for its duality in order to restore the balance. This means that stress finds its opposite pole, called peace, in the event of a system error. Whether the unit is then going to find other units with the same resistance and other similar thought forms, or quietly, via illnesses and life challenges, learns to align itself with a collective thought form, then a development or a phase-out is going to occur anyway, as we cannot survive without the opposite poles. If, for instance, you would call in sick at work and then get well, or you would find a new job when you are affected by stress, and then continue with the same patterns that caused your stress condition in your first job, but at another workplace, then the other job might phase you out as an employee. Therefore, our ability to be vulnerable is vital, since there we can let go and find the system error and change the inappropriate into the appropriate. We can reject something to be able to receive something else. Quality of vulnerability is an essential basic element in order to create a sustainable value. Funny enough, the opposite pole to rejection is reception. But because the collective system no longer needs this kind of rejection and reception, cause and effect, which the optimized unit searches for, then chaos is created, as the collective consciousness is automatically going to reject the need for reception by the unit in its rejection, and then it rejects. Here, the integration ability is lacking, so that in the unit, the rejection of recognition of its own condition is missing. And the rejection by the unit as to recognize its own condition, stress, meets a rejection from the collective consciousness, and thus they separate. The integration dissolves. They are unable to meet in agreement in the disagreement, and then the conflict occurs, when minus and minus meet in a magnet. Every magnet has both plus and minus. Therefore, our existence in balance depends on our opposite poles. This is where it may end up in a development, if both opposite poles meet in agreement or a phase-out, or if they are unable to meet in agreement and hit only one of their dualities. This is where our emotional intelligence is the key to agreement. All wars we humans wage against each other are based on our lacking development of our emotional intelligence. The ability lacking to make use of our combined intelligence, the operational concrete intelligence combined with the emotional not concrete intelligence, to be able to handle the emotions provided by the comprehension ability and the logical thinking which the opposite pole brings along. We need all of our abilities activated in an interaction with each other. These are the 6 hypotheses which substantiate our 2-part law of consciousness, and thus the meta-duality theory. Number 1, innovation ability. 2nd, integration ability. 3rd, capacity ability. The 4th one, wholeness ability. Number 5, coincidence ability. And number 6, divergent ability. The solution to a calm, happy, and easy life is to learn how to go as small as possible and to do great things by using the wholeness in your capacity combined consciousness.